is Sam. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Sam.
My current sobriety date is October 26, 2024, so I'm on day 85 today.
Good job.
It's probably the 10th time I've been on day 85 since I started trying to get sober at 23. I started drinking at 14. Both of my siblings, it's definitely family disease, are alcoholics, and they're significantly older than me, so they were my drinking buddies. So at 14, I started going to my 20-year-old sister's house and getting drunk every weekend. And I think like a lot of us, I guess for me, it was definitely the answer. Instantly, I knew I had a drinking problem, but I didn't really know what that meant yet. It definitely clicked something in my brain that made it so I could be social and funny. All the other depression and anxiety and body dysmorphia that every teenage girl is going through at the time all just kind of faded away. I was the first one in my friend group to start drinking, and it was a chip on my shoulder. I could keep up with the guys. I would get nicknames for drinking. It felt like it made me popular as like the awkward band kid in high school. And it was fine for probably 6 years or so. And then at 20, before it was even legal, stuff started to happen. I was drinking way more than I should be. I was still in college, so I didn't really see it as a problem. All my friends drank heavily. I was still going to work. I was in a relationship. So the big nights where I was rude, would get in fights, I didn't really see it as a problem. It was happening maybe once every 6 months, and then it was once a month, and then it was once a week. By the time I got sober this time, it was every single time I drank, something bad was happening. So in my early 20s, I was about to get married, and 2 weeks before my wedding, my fiance almost took my engagement ring, so I walked my ass into an AA meeting. I texted my older alcoholic brother and was like, I don't know what to do, and he just said, go to a meeting. So I walked into a meeting, and I thought everyone in there was probably 30 years older than me. That, looking back now, that's probably not true at all. They were probably pretty close to my age, or my age now. And a lot of them were talking about divorces and DUIs and just a bunch of things that I could not relate to as a 23-year-old college student. So I went to 3 meetings. I was sober for 11 days. Then I got in the car to go to my bachelorette party. I do not remember that weekend. And I got married. And I continued to drink, told everyone I wasn't an alcoholic because I was too young and I couldn't relate to any of these people's story. And it was probably 2 years later that it ramped up again to the point where now I'm always thinking about drinking. Every day at work, it's just getting home to drink. And I still would try and convince my husband it's not a problem because I'm drinking with my girlfriends, right? They're also drinking. That's when I started noticing the mental differences between me and maybe like a heavy drinker. I was thinking about alcohol all the time. It wasn't just when I was drinking. I was watching my friends' drinks to make sure that I wasn't outpacing them, so that I knew when I could make another drink, because I didn't want it to look like I had a problem. If I chose to be sober for a night, that took so much mental effort that I don't think my friends were going through. They just would take the night off. So I kept going in and out of AA. I would have a sponsor for a little bit, and this was all happening. I lived in Georgia at the time, and I'm not religious, so that was also very difficult for me. I had a lot of resentment and anger towards AA. I felt it was a cult. And I had a guy stand up in a meeting once and say, if you don't believe in Jesus, then you might as well go drink. And I almost got up and walked out and went, okie dokie, I'm gonna go drink then. I just couldn't wrap my head around the God concept. And I kept being told that if I didn't have this relationship with God, that I was gonna drink again. So I was like, then why should I try? So I had a couple sponsors. I worked my way around it to find a higher power that kind of worked for me, but I would always just end up going back out. I could convince anyone that I was able to drink because I held down a job. I had a college degree. From the outside looking in, it looked okay, except for the holes I punched in my door, or the, suicidal thoughts, or the falling apart marriage. There is not a ring on my finger, so that did not last. So So finally, once I did eventually get divorced, I left Georgia. I moved to New York and started drinking subconsciously with the decision, I think, to kind of drink myself to death. I didn't know it, but I was drunk at all times. It had escalated to drinking at work. It had escalated to drinking in the morning. And one night I just looked at myself in the mirror and was disgusted and woke up and didn't drink for 14 months. I just was done. And I didn't step into a meeting during that time. I didn't talk to a single person in recovery. I found a new partner that loved that I was sober. I made new friends. I was killing it at work. I lost 20 pounds. It was the best year of my life. I traveled to different countries. But I have depression. I have anxiety. I have all of these things that while you get that pink cloud moment when you remove the booze, those things all came back, and I did not have a single person in recovery to turn to because I hadn't gone into AA, because I had a lot of anger towards AA, and I thought I was proving all of you wrong because I had hit over a year without coming to a meeting. So I definitely thought at that point that I was smarter than AA, had figured it out. I read all the self-help books, and I thought, I had found a way. But at about 14 months when I decided to relapse, because I do think it was kind of a choice. I'd been sitting on it. I had talked to people about it, but even my partner at the time who had seen me at my worst, it was easy to convince because they don't have that same obsessive mentality that I have with booze. It was, well, you've taken the year off, you've become so healthy, if you think you can handle it now, then why shouldn't you be allowed to drink? You're an adult. So I did. I started drinking, and it crashed and burned so quickly. It escalated to a point that it had never been before. And so I would take a month off and go back, take 3 months off, go back. And I was constantly doing this little game. At that point, I had moved to Salt Lake City and tried to go into AA there. And if I thought the religion in Georgia was difficult to wrap my head around, Utah was rough for me. So I only went to a couple meetings there and just continued on and off to drink. I kept making more drinking friends, more people that accepted that version of me, that alcoholic Sam, where it wasn't really a problem for me to drink because the people around me were also drinking. I could travel and drink and go have a great time. For my 30th birthday, I drank my way through Thailand, and it was super fun. And I can tell that story all day, or I could tell the story where I traveled to Mexico and got so drunk I almost ran out into the street in front of a car because I was so depressed I wanted to kill myself. I've been able to do this the whole time I've been drinking. I can list off a million reasons why it's okay for me to drink, and why I'm the same as someone outside of these rooms. And I always thought I was such a high bottom drunk because I didn't have a DUI, but I always, under my breath, I'm like, yeah, but I crashed my car. I just didn't get caught. Or I didn't lose my job, but I was drinking at work. There's all of these yets, or all these things that I didn't check off. And from the outside looking in, my friends never quite could understand why I had to stop drinking. But it really is just that mental obsession that took up so much space for me that I couldn't breathe anymore. This last time that I went out, it was just a really dark time in my relationship. All my friends are in Georgia. I'm very isolated up here. I'd had 4 months sober, and everything felt like it was crashing and burning. And I was like, if it's all going to crash and burn, then I'm going to drink, because might as well be sad and drunk. And I forget every time how much worse it can get. And I don't know what that is. So this time when I drank, it really reminded me how much mental space it takes up. I'd have to sober up for work, but there's booze very accessible at my job. And all of a sudden, if I wasn't drinking, I was thinking about drinking. I could no longer be present. It's like we've all, or a lot of alcoholics have experienced that. It's like when you go to a concert, you can't even enjoy who's performing because you're thinking about getting a line to go get a beer. That was just me at all times now, because there was booze at my job. There was booze at my house. You can get booze delivered in Seattle, which I figured out this last time. And that's, I think, what really finally brought me in here and made me want to change. it wasn't the drinking, because I can always convince myself to drink. It was that even when I was sober, it took up every inch of my brain. I couldn't just not think about booze. Whether I was sober, at work, working out, I was always thinking about booze. So that mental obsession is started to fade the longer I'm sober, which I appreciate. This time coming into AA, I have a sponsor that I actually talk to, which is different for me. I reach out to her if something's bad or I actually want to drink. I tell her I want to drink instead of pretending I don't. I still struggle with the steps, but I'm actually doing them. And I just do what I'm told, which I never really did before. Even with sponsors in the past, I would assume I was smarter than them, or they were worse off. They did something more than I did. And this time I finally realized that my way has not been working very well. I still have a lot to lose. I have a job that I absolutely love. I have a boyfriend who's been super supportive of me, whether I'm sober or not. And it's not something I would like to lose. And I'm very grateful, even though I've relapsed 20 times, I've gotten out of this kind of unscathed. I've kept my health because of all the breaks that I've had. I used to have this mentality that it wasn't worth it to try again because I have no trust in myself. Definitely feeling like a fraud. Like I always relapse, so why give it another try? And I think it's this time around that I've started to understand more that one day at a time that everyone's been shoving down my throat since I was in my early 20s. I never understood it because everyone says one day at a time, but we're all in here for the same reason, right? To stop drinking forever. But I think after this last relapse, I realized that every day that I am not drinking is definitely a success for me, because relapse is such a big part of my story. If I drink in 10 years, I can't really do anything about that right now, but I still want the 10 years. And I think that's my biggest mental shift. I finally just do not care if I relapse in 10, 20, 30 years. I'm just really, really happy to be sober right now. So, I don't know. I hope you guys got something out of that. That's all I got.
Good.